guys. All right, we're gonna try this again. We're trying it with me starting it this time, and I'll wait for Shakti to hop on. I don't know why. It went sideways for me the first time, or all jacked up the first time. I'm also in a new location tonight, which is exciting. And let's see. My computer isn't restarting, or the Facebook isn't refreshing. All right, Shakti, let's get you on. Hi, Shannon. Thank you. I just got in like an hour ago, so I scarfed down some food, and here I am. This is Shakti's adding. Hopefully everything goes smoothly tonight. You know, we are in Mercury retrograde, yes. And I'm on a different. Hey, I'm like we're in Mercury retrograde, and I'm on a different Wi-Fi network. So fingers crossed it all goes well.
Girl, I just said that in the previous video. I was like, and Mercury retrograde, here we go.
Back at it again this week. Mercury retrograde is fucking us.
Fucking hey, you know. All right, so we're gonna share this out. I shared it out before, and I shouldn't have. I should have shared it now.
I was like, look, Shakti shared. Well, it said Shakti shared your live video, and I was like, but I didn't go live. What the hell did she share?
What is she sharing?
I was like, isn't that interesting?
All right, so we're gonna share this out. You guys tag your people, share it out.
I'm going to share it to my like page this time too.
Yeah, I'm gonna do that also.
Like, why did I not think of that before?
I'm not sure. But that's always fun. Let's do all the things.
Just put it everywhere. We're gonna put this shit everywhere. You guys share it out.
Blast. All right, say hi as you guys are hopping on. Let us know that you're here. I had a couple people message me and be like, I'm so excited it's Monday! And that
Yay! I'm excited it's Monday. I didn't know how traveling was going to work out, but everything worked out smoothly. And can I just say, I was telling Shakti in a Voxer, so I left Macomb this morning. I wanted to leave earlier. I left at 10 a.m. Central Time. It's a little over, it's like an 8.5-hour drive, and then, you know, I switch over to Eastern Time. And so I was like praying to the travel gods that everything would go well. And I was like, I created time today. I got here like 30 minutes earlier than I thought I was going to get here. And I still stopped and I got gas and I peed and I did all the things that you do when you're on a road trip. But I was like, I created what I wanted for today. Boom. Everything went smoothly.
That's magic, though. That's intentional. That's right there is like intentional magic. That's the real kind of magic right there.
Yeah, this was not, I did not just, I mean, I was very intentional about my words, my thoughts, my energy, like everything. I definitely created today to go as smoothly as possible. And I prayed, you know, before I left, I prayed for good weather. It was the most beautiful weather. And can I tell you that the host here, or one of the hosts, she said that it was the best weather they've had, like, since winter. She's like, spring finally came. And I'm like, I mean,
it's because of me. Y'all can thank me later. Make me some free pancakes in the morning. I appreciate you.
You want a live video of cats traveling in the car? I'm going to talk about that actually in my Instagram stories, because Smitty he's okay. Guinea's a rock star in the car, but I completely believe that it's because she meditates with me for an hour every morning. So she just like got in the carrier. She's like, oh, this is what we do. And then she didn't make a peep the entire 8.5-hour car ride. She was just like, because my energy is super chill, you know, because I've been meditating and she's been meditating with me. Whereas Smitty's like, what are we doing? what is this like?
Proof right there. Fucking proof. Right there.
Yeah. Yep.
Works. today's topic is very, very important to both of us and both of our stories. And I'm going to start with a disclaimer that we are not medical physicians and this is not medical advice. Everything we are sharing is from our personal experience, and it's a powerful one at that. And everybody's story is different, and every single person is different, and everybody's mental patterning is different. Your genetics are different, and how things present for you and express through you are going to be specific to you. So I just want to begin with that disclaimer. I don't want any hate messages on this video. Like, y'all not doctors, don't know what you're saying. Okay? Don't nobody leave those messages because we don't care. That's not what this is about. Okay? Yeah, I just screwed that up.
I'm glad you made that disclaimer because I probably would have forgotten. I would have, like, at the end, I would have been like, oh yeah, FYI.
We ain't doctors, just so you know. All right. So, let's talk about it. Physical health and the stories around it. So important. So Anne and I both have really powerful stories of being quite ill as young children, very young children, and how that has shaped and did shape our identity when we were that small and the stories that we told ourselves. And then how we've since then discovered that those patterns that we developed around that story actually really sunk in deep to the rest of our experience of life as adults, and how we've undone those stories, and what is the thing that happens when you become very attached to a story about a physical condition that you have. And we went as far as calling it an addiction because we believe that we can get addicted to our own stories and to our detriment. So that's what we're going to talk about today, y'all. It's going to get real.
I feel like this is such a good topic, and there's so much, like, there's so many different directions we can go on this one too. So we'll see where we end up.
Let's go.
All right. You want to start or you want me to start?
You can start.
All right. So I feel like I always start, which is great because I just say whatever comes out, and then later I'm like, oh yeah, there's more to add. So, but as far as my health conditions or my physical conditions or where I started my story, it started at a really young age when I had encephalitis. I don't remember the exact age, but it was under 2. And encephalitis is the inflammation of the brain, for those of you who don't know. And I was at the point where I was beginning to talk and I was beginning to walk. But with the encephalitis, basically what happened was I lost all control of the right side of my body. And so I lost the ability to walk. I lost all progress I had made in walking or talking was gone. And the doctors said, she'll never walk again. She'll never talk again. You need to start teaching her sign language. Clearly I speak just fine. So I overcame this, and I really think that it was that story. Obviously I didn't have language at the time, right? But I was in that energy. I was in that story, and I've been in that story my entire life. I've been in the energy of that story my entire life. And I feel like my fighting attitude of let me show you, let me prove you wrong, I think that that's where it started, was really with saying, hearing, you know, the doctors are having the energy of she'll never do these things again. And clearly subconsciously somewhere in my energy, I was like, let me fucking show you. I'm gonna do all the things. And so I don't have physical limitations from that, but through my schooling, it did affect certain learning abilities, right? So I wasn't labeled as having a learning disability, but I did struggle with comprehension. And because I struggled with comprehension, my self-esteem was really low in school for a long time. And there are still moments, and even as a teacher, you know, I'd be reading out loud and then I'd be asking questions, and I had to go back and like look through the text because I couldn't remember. It's affected me my entire life. But part of it too was that I grew up with hearing other people, you know, family members talk about the fact that I had a learning disability. I heard family members talk about how I had these limitations. I heard family members say that I was missing part of my brain. And so it gets to you, right? And so it was because of that I believed for the majority of my life that I was not intelligent, right? That I couldn't do certain things. And then in addition to those specific health issues, I had childhood asthma. I was told that I was always going to have asthma. It was to the point where like I was coughing so hard that I was vomiting. I wanted to do things such as run. I was told that I wasn't going to be able to run. I was going to be on an inhaler. Like I was going to have these physical limitations my entire life. For those of you who have followed my journey, you know that I just ran a marathon in October. So it was, again, because of that mentality of let me prove you wrong, let me show you, let me find a different way, let me overcome these obstacles, because I didn't want to live a life of limitations. And I've had struggles with my weight my entire life. I've had comments made, right, my entire life from family members. And I thyroid issues run in our family, Hashimoto's, hypothyroidism. And I've been borderline hypothyroid. So I've had all of these things where my belief for a really long time was, this is just how it's going to be. I'm destined to be overweight. I was told that the women in our family have flat butts and big bellies. So I was like, that's just how I'm going to be, you know? But through really getting curious, right? Getting curious and educating myself and looking into different types of, I say diets as a lifestyle, not a diet as far as a limitation or restriction or anything like that, but a diet as far as a lifestyle. I've tried multiple diets to see what works best with my body. I'm constantly looking into things and trying new things because I know what's possible. And I also have a very strong vision of the life that I want to live, not being limited by my story. So, I mean, I could go on forever. I'm going to let Shakti talk, but that's basically the gist of my story.
So I never realized how similar our stories are, in the sense
that
they're
super
how we
similar
responded to them. Oh my God, it's like the same story. So
I know, there's a reason we work together.
I know. I had a very different experience in the sense that I was born with a condition. I came into the world lucky, one out of whatever statistic I was. A heart condition, a congenital heart condition, CHD, that at the time had a very high mortality rate. I've shared this story before, I think, on the podcast. I had open heart surgery at 3 days old, somehow survived. Ironically, the fact that I was born a fat baby is what saved my life. That's what kept me alive post-surgery. Go figure, I would then struggle with my weight the rest of my life, which is an interesting thing to look back on. And I, too, was told at a very young age, number one, I was going to have to need multiple surgeries before I was 15 years old, that I would never be able to have natural childbirth, that I'd never be able to be an athlete. I was never allowed to do physical education in school. I always had to sit it out and watch other kids do that. Gosh, you can't get tattoos, you can't get piercings, because you get a blood infection and you could die, and la 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 la. Can't ride roller coasters and can't. And so I did what Anne did, and I was like, I'm gonna do all the things. Fuck you, people. Watch me. That's exactly what I did. And I already had a very strong personality, very rajastic in general. My sun sign's in Sagittarius. My rising sign is in Aquarius. I have very strong perception of self, and I know who I am. And so that just added fuel to the fire and just made me even more rajastic and more young, more action-oriented, and kind of bullheaded and rebellious just for the sake of being so, because I always felt like I had to prove that I was alive. Like I had to prove something about being alive. And I didn't really realize that until I started Reiki training, and that was like the very first attunement I did. That's like laying down my armor was like the very first exercise that I did. And that was an extremely eye-opening exercise for me to realize how much I was looking at life as a battle, and I had to like earn my right to be there somehow. So I was constantly going against the grain, constantly doing things for the sake of doing it and proving them wrong. I covered myself in piercings, I covered myself in tattoos, I rode all the roller coasters, I did everything I was told I was not supposed to do, and I'm alive. I've never had surgery since. I've really defied the odds. But I also did things like, I really turned to meditation very young. I turned to food very young, diet in the way that Anne used the word diet as far as like lifestyle. I was also diagnosed with PCOS when I was in my early 20s, polycystic ovarian syndrome. I was also diagnosed with hypothyroidism and borderline Hashimoto's as well. So like Anne, I had a laundry list of diagnoses that were given to me very early on in my life. And I turned a lot like Anne to physical activity and nutrition. And I said to myself, what can I control in my life? That's the first thing I looked at, was what do I have control over? And there was really two things that I knew I had control over. I couldn't control how I was born, right? Anne couldn't control if she got encephalitis when she was about 2 years old. But I knew I could control what I put in my head and what I put in my body and what I did with my body. I could control those things. So that's where I went. I went to the study of like mind power and also like nourishment and movement. And what did that look like and how could I use that to my benefit? That's where I went. That's where I jumped into. So how that affected me the rest of my life is it's made me extremely rajasic, very young. It's been very challenging for me to step into my yin and allow. That's been a huge part of my journey, is allowing.
Me too.
Relaxing and not feeling like I have to prove my existence, right? Just being alive. Like I just have to prove that I'm alive and that it's good that I'm alive. And I don't really know where that story came from, but it started very, very young. And just like a side note, that when I was in bodywork school, when the first time I ever had chest work done, I just started bawling, right? Like bawling my eyes out when this instructor was working on my chest in front of all these students, right? Like I was the model and I did not see this coming. And then I just had this fear and this panic inside of me. And I was telling her, like, I don't have the words to express what I'm feeling. I'm just feeling all these things. And she was like, that's because when it happened, you were pre-verbal. You didn't have words. So you're just experiencing the emotions of what you lived. So I add that in there to let you guys know that what you experience when you're very young, even if it's pre-verbal, even if you don't have language for it, you don't have an explanation for it, it stays in your body. It is recorded in your body. And that's when it's up to us to change that story. This is when it becomes critical that your awareness of self, like, really, really becomes a center focus of your life if you're going to change that story. So that's a Cliff Notes version of my own story.
It's so interesting that you talk about the feel like you needing to prove being alive, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like when you were talking about that, I was like, I think that totally I think it resonates with it. No, it resonates with me, right? And I had a very similar experience about 1.5 years ago when I had my chakras balanced, and as she was going, down my chakras, she received the guidance of, that you don't need to prove anymore. There's nothing you need to prove. And I started bawling. It was the exact same experience, right? Of like, I realized that I have been in this proving energy my entire life. And just like Shakti, I really have struggled. I'm very aware. I don't like to say that I struggle, right? Because that's creating a story, but I am very aware of when I struggle to receive, when I struggle to really, step back, because I think Shakti and I are also very in our masculine energy because of that proving armor. Got to fight, fight for what we want, fight to live, fight to do this, fight to prove ourselves, fight for our worth. Like there's a self-worth behind that as well. So yeah, I totally resonate with that.
And that's probably the core truth of a lot of our stories. So anybody who's watching right now, if you've ever had like a physical ailment or a physical condition where you've been told you can't do certain things or you're going to be limited or whatever, you probably in some way, shape or form, either one of two things happened. You developed what we did, which is a very rajasic personality and a very like, I'm going to prove you wrong and do what I want. And in some way went like way too masculine, way too in the yang energy. Or you did the opposite, which is really embrace this kind of victimhood mentality of like, I can't do anything, like because of this thing, like I am helpless and I need everybody to do things for me. And so you've adopted one of those two, both of which are way extreme, like they're way on the opposite ends of balance for sure. And so that becomes your story. And then what ends up happening is it becomes generalized. So it doesn't just stick to your physical ailment or your physical condition. It now becomes a way that you operate in the world, which is what Anne and I just mentioned. And it touches everything. It touches your romantic relationships. It touches your professional relationships. It touches your relationship to your children, especially touches that, because then you start to get triggered when you have kids who don't fall in line with your story, because our kids don't fall into our story. They have their own story and they don't care about what your story is. So when they don't feed your story, that's when that comes out. All of those like trigger points come out. So that's kind of what we want to like communicate to you guys, that if you're struggling with something or have struggled with something and it's become a really integrated part of your identity, that it is become a generalized part of your identity, not just specific to this thing. And it can actually be a detriment to how you operate in the world.
Well, and also, so one thing I wanted to touch on, you know, Shakti said you typically have one of two ways you can go, right? Either you're super in the masculine and feel like you need to prove, right? But you're proving that you're worthy, or you just kind of sit back and say, oh, well, you become a victim, like an extreme victim, right? And the reason you really fall in one of two, either way you go, the reason we are so stuck to our stories is, first of all, because we identify with them, right? We say, I am, and then whatever follows that. So you've identified with, you've attached yourself to the story. But then in addition to that, it's almost always, I would say like pretty much always, how you receive love. If you have not learned how to give yourself love, then you're looking for other people outside of you to give that love to you, right? So either way, whether you feel like you're having to prove yourself to be worthy of, you feel like you have to prove to be worthy of receiving love. So I have to push and fight and do all the shit so that I am worthy of receiving love. And then on the flip side, if you're in, it's really the wounded feminine. If you're in that victim mentality, then it's, let me just sit back and be a victim and I can't do anything and everyone does things for me and oh, poor me. And then that's also how you receive love. And so if you are relying on other people to give you love based on your story, then it's really scary to detach and change that story, because immediately ego first goes into, I'm going to die, right? Because ego has attached itself to that story. And then second of all, ego says, but this is how we receive love. So if we don't hold on to the story, then we're not going to, who's going to love us? Who's going to fucking love us? And so that's why it's so hard to change it, you know, because it feels really comfortable.
That's damn true. And I will say that on the spectrum of being really rajastic and taking the approach that Anne and I took, what ends up happening with the ego then is that it makes it difficult for you to receive kind love, compassionate love, gentle love, yin love. You then become the kind of person who becomes a magnet for wounded ass fucking people and dramatic ass relationships. That's what happens. Because again, you're in the fight to prove, fight to be alive, fight to whatever. So you've got to fight in your romantic relationship as well, or else it doesn't feel safe to you, because that's what you're accustomed to. I'm living fucking proof of that. My husband is extremely calm and in the feminine. He's really connected. And most of the times when we feel disconnected, it's because I'm not receiving. I'm not open to receive, because I'm still navigating my own story, my own like really hyper masculine, and have to step back and really look at that. Like, whoa, I don't need to fight this anymore. Like, this is safe. Like, I have to literally tell myself a new story about the safety of my relationship. So that's really important to note as well. Like, you will end up attracting very different kinds of relationships specifically into your life, depending on like what end of the spectrum you're at. And for us, that's pretty common. That's pretty common.
Yep. Yeah. And I mean, that was a big lesson, and it's been a big lesson in all my relationships, is how do I receive? How do I back off of my masculine? I also try to control and force and manipulate everything within relationships, because that's what I do, right? I have to prove that I'm worthy. So yeah, that's dead on. Yep. And then I also had a relationship where my partner was also very much in the masculine, and again, the wounded masculine. And so that was just an explosive relationship. Like, that was not a good one.
Yeah. So, and we share this to give you the example of how it touches other parts of your life, right? Like it could start with something as like a small story. And the other thing I wanted to mention too is that stories, especially when it comes to physical ailment, get passed down through our family line. And there's this whole story of like genetics. Like if they have it, like you're gonna have it. If it's genetically in your family, if you're genetically predisposed, if you're hereditary or whatever. And I just want to like, there's a whole line of science called epigenetics that is pretty much proving right now as we speak that your genes turn on and off. Like you can switch them on and off. They are actually extremely malleable and flexible. They are not set in stone, and they are a sort of building block, but it's like a switchboard. Like they don't all just come on because you happen to be born from someone who has a certain genetic activation. You don't have to have the same activation. You can actually not have that be active. And there's a doctor by the name of Bruce Lipton who I have followed for years because his work really fascinates me. He actually gave up his position as a physician, I believe, at Harvard, if I'm not mistaken, because he was like, everything we're teaching is like it's like outdated. None of this is true. Like he taught genetics, and he was like, none of this actually stands true. Like what I'm seeing in my studies is quite different than what I'm telling these students, you know, about how genes work. So that's really important to understand as well, that we get handed down stories about what is our fate and like what is in the cards for us, and like that's not true. That's just a story, and it's a story that's collectively supported by other people in your family. Like that's all that is. Like hypothyroidism in Anne's family, you know, like everybody's gonna end up looking like this and being like this. Like why? Like how is that true?
Well, it's the same thing also with mental illness, you know? I mean,
Yeah.
depression
Oh
runs
my
in my
God.
family as well. And so, you know, this is the thing, like it really begins with getting curious, right? And looking at alternatives. And once I started to really, it was when I started to really look into the paleo diet, that was when I started to learn. So it was years ago, right, that I learned about the genes turning on and off. And I was like, oh, well, shit. So okay. And so then that's when I started to realize that what I fuel my body with matters, right? And then meditation obviously matters. But then as far as the mental illness, for me, it really boiled down to it being okay to feel my feelings. And this was another area where it was like when I was going through major transitions and I was crying a lot because I was obviously grieving and there was loss and I was processing all of it. The first thing that certain family members came to me about were, it's depression. It's got to be depression. You need to go to the doctor, get on meds. Your thyroid's probably fucked up and you need to, like, so it was like immediately, instead of looking at, okay, she's just gone through this huge transition and it's actually quite normal to be grieving and crying and processing all these emotions. But the first thing was, go to the doctor, get your thyroid checked. You're also depressed, probably anxiety as well. And get on medication. Like medication is the first thing that we go to, when instead of actually and medication is abandoned. I'm not saying that medication is never, you know, beneficial. There are moments where it is, but I didn't want to live my entire life, and I've been clinically depressed. Like I didn't want to live my entire life on medicine. That was not in the cards for me. And so when I really understood that there was another way, and it really boiled down to what I put in my body, including thoughts that I put in my body, then game over. Like that was it for me. I knew that I was never going back to another way.
That's so huge, because that's a big story in my family. Everybody I know is medicated for depression and anxiety. Literally everybody that I know in my family has some form of that. And I'm the only one that isn't. And I have had ridiculous bouts of depression and anxiety where I probably should have, like at certain points, to just help me out for a short period of time, which, by the way, we're not saying medication is the devil. We're saying that sometimes in short-term circumstances, meditation might be appropriate. You might be so far gone that for a short period of time, you need that to bring you back to center. But make no mistake about it, it is a Band-Aid. It's not addressing the core of what's going on. And when you stop taking them, you'll end up where you were if you don't adopt lifestyle practices that physically change you on a core level, okay? And that's where we miss the mark in allopathic medicine, is we prescribe this thing, but we don't also tell people you need to make lifestyle changes, because if you don't, this isn't actually going to do anything for you. It's going to substitute your natural neurotransmitters, and as soon as you get off of it, you're actually going to be worse than you were, because now you're not producing neurotransmitters for yourself, which is how depression medication works. Okay, so by making lifestyle changes, I learned really valuable things, like Anne and I both share this. Sugar is a massive depressant, you guys. Like, if you can't understand what we're saying, like, look it up for yourself. Sugar is linked to depression like nobody's business. It is such an, it fluctuates your mood like crazy. It amplifies your anxiety like crazy. It really plummets you into depression. And let me say that it is in everything that people typically eat. So it's not a surprise to me that we have a society of clinically depressed people like motherfuckers everywhere, because we're eating a crap ton of stuff that's assisting in making that worse. I mean, it's all linked. And there's even a whole new field of psychiatry called nutritional psychiatry that's opening up as we speak to address this very thing. The understanding that nutrition is so deeply linked to mental health that if we don't start looking there, like, there's nothing that's going to help us. Medication is not going to solve this problem. We're going to continue to have more clinically depressed people. It's not going to actually help the statistic at all. So yeah, like Anne, food for me was pivotal. And I'm the only one in my family who chose to address it from that angle. Like, how can I watch what I'm eating and see how my body reacts? How can I move my body and see if I can create more endorphins? By the way, the majority of your serotonin is produced in your gut. In case you guys didn't know that, like, it is produced in your gut and then used by your brain. Okay, so when you have gut issues, poor gut health, leaky gut, things of that nature, you're not taking probiotics, you're not making sure that your gut is healthy, and you're staying away, or you're not staying away from things that aggravate you or inflame you, you're actually hurting your capacity to produce serotonin, which is then hurting your capacity to have a stable mindset, stable mood. That's really important, and a lot of people don't know that. And when I learned that, it was like, boom, the link was like immediate for me, like, this is why. It was so eye-opening.
I'm just like sitting here, I'm like, God, where do we go next? Because obviously the discussion on sugar is really important. Alcohol is another depressant. And again, you guys who have known me for a really long time know, like, I love my wine. I'm not gonna sit here and lie and say, like, I mean, I used to be a heavy drinker. Shakti used to be a heavy drinker as well. And I still enjoy wine, but I haven't had it in, I don't know, like over 3 months now, and I don't miss it. I'm not saying I'm never going to have a glass of wine again, but I don't miss it. And part of it is that I don't miss going into that depression. And I was very much like Shakti in the fact that there were moments in my life where, I mean, way past being clinically depressed once I was off medicine, there were definite moments where I was probably teetering. Like, I probably could have benefited, especially during some like really, really deep, dark times, the very beginning of the dark night of the soul, for sure. But I didn't want to be on medicine. I wanted to find a way, that I wanted to find my way through it. Right. And it wasn't about proving it to anyone at that point. It was really just that I knew it was possible. And I wanted to find a way to really live a healthy, balanced lifestyle. And I think that it's important then for us to go into the excuses, right? Because so many people have these excuses, and Shakti and I, again, both hear them on a regular basis. And two of the biggest ones, like, well, three of the biggest ones, I don't have the money for it, right? I don't have the time. And another big one is I'm not a morning person. I will tell you guys that I told myself the story of I'm not a morning person for my entire fucking life. My entire fucking life. That's been my story. And I still don't consider myself, like, I wouldn't just offer up like, oh, I'm totally a morning person. That's not how I identify either. But my health is so important to me that I will do whatever I have to do to maintain it. So this morning, for instance, I knew I was going to be on the road for 8.5 hours. I knew that when I got in, I was basically going to be like unpacking my stuff and then hopping on here. I wasn't going to have a lot of me time. And even though, yeah, it's me in the car, I'm not working out in the car. I'm not meditating in the car. Like, I needed to have that time. So I was up at 4 a.m. this morning to make myself breakfast, eggs, sweet potatoes, and kale, and to allow myself an hour-long workout and to allow myself an hour-long meditation. And I'll tell you that a couple days ago when I was going through the schedule in my head, I was like, okay, how am I going to fit this all in, right? And I was really asking myself how, because it was not easy, right? It wasn't easy to get up at 4 a.m., but I was like, how am I going to fit in everything that's really important to me to continue to be balanced so that I'm not sacrificing my own energy? Because I also wanted to be able, not just for myself, but I wanted to be able to show up and be really present for you guys, because this is one of my priorities. And so I started to look through my schedule and I thought, you know what? I can shorten my meditation. I can shorten my meditation and just do 30 minutes, which a 30-minute meditation is still like a bomb-ass meditation. But I was like, no, you know what? I've committed to myself to do an hour meditation every single morning. And I've been doing it for just under a month now, and I haven't missed a day. But I see such progress in my energy throughout the day that I'm not willing to put myself, my needs, my energy, like nothing else is worth putting myself on the back burner. So if it meant getting my ass out of bed at 4 a.m., I got my ass out of bed at 4 a.m. and I got everything done you know what? And today went fucking smoothly. And I can guarantee you that today would not have gone the way that it went had I put myself on the back burner. So at some point, you have to drop the fucking excuses.
Yeah. Amen. Amen. And like with both of us and like investing in yourself, whether it's investing in like a group opportunity, like group coaching or your health or whatever, we both have done it. And I'll tell you, when I joined my company and I started working as a coach and then I started using their products, I didn't have the money for that. I pulled out this mutual savings account. I didn't tell my husband. And then I was like, I gotta earn this money back and put it back in the account. And I did, because it mattered to me. And that's what Anne is saying. When something matters to you so much, you are willing to do whatever it takes. There's no such thing as an excuse. That doesn't reside in your mind. And you can read story after story after story of successful person who has come from nothing, who was told that they would never beat anything, and they busted their butts to do the internal work necessary to get to where they wanted to be. Okay? And this is the primary message for you guys tonight, if you take nothing else away. What you were diagnosed with, what story you were given, what challenge you're currently going through, what doesn't define you at all. You do. You have a situation or you have a story, you get to do something with it. And if you're not where you want to be, then you're telling yourself the wrong story. And you need to change that. And nobody's going to change that for you. That's the other part. If you don't do something, you're going to be watching everybody else change. You're going to be following people that inspire you and growing and blowing up their lives and getting better and better. And you're going to be sitting in the sidelines wondering, why not me? The reason it's not you, it's because you haven't made the decision. It's not because anything is wrong with you or you're less than or you're not capable. It's because you have not decided that it will be you. That's it. That is like the single thing. The only thing that's different.
And the thing is, like, it has to come from you, because if you don't decide and if it's not important to you, no one else is going to motivate you to do it, right? So we hear all the time, like, oh, I wish I had the motivation. You have the fucking motivation. The motivation is within you. Other people can inspire you, but the motivation comes from within you. And it's not easy when everyone else, like, that you're surrounded with are spouting off their victim mentality stories. It's not easy when everyone else is eating the shit food that you used to eat and you're like at the beginning of changing. So it has to come from you, because no one else is going to support you the way that you need to support yourself. And again, another reason that having either a community or a coach or someone who you're working with to help hold you accountable, of course, like, we as coaches don't do it for you, but we help to shine that light on your patterns and to shine that light on your excuses that you keep telling yourself, and to hold up that mirror and say, you're doing it again. You're doing it again. Because no one else in your life is going to do that for you. And if you don't have like that strong why of why you're doing it, and that belief, like that deep-seated belief in knowing that it is possible, you don't have to know how. That's the other thing. You don't have to know how it's going to get done. You don't have to know exactly what it's going to look like in the end, but just knowing that it's possible is huge.
Yes, yes. And actually, we have an announcement to go with this conversation. We forgot to say at the beginning of this video, and everybody like hopped off. And you're like, well, you're going to miss the announcement now, which was really important. But we have received a lot of feedback from you guys about the podcast and about these conversations and how so many of you follow it every Monday night and get so much out of it. And you're like, well, how do I take this further? How do I take this somewhere else? And Ed and I have really worked to create something where you guys could actively do something with our support to help change your story. We didn't want to make it like a typical group coaching thing, because we get on here and we teach every Monday night. This is something that's available to you at every single Monday on every week. We wanted to do something that was more interactive and immersive. So we have created a community that is going to be specific to the people who watch Relax, This Is Going to Suck. We've created a mastermind that's specific to you guys. It is a membership mastermind. So there is a membership fee to join, and it is a monthly fee. But along with that, you get a lot more of our individualized support and attention, because we've gotten emails from people being like, hey, how do I work with you guys? I need the help. You know, I'm ready to get out of my pattern. I'm ready to do something different. So we want to support you as much as we possibly can. And we are very busy women, and we have very busy lives already with our clients and the work that we do. So we wanted to create something that would feel good and energizing and not be, you know, like everything else that's out there. Something different.
Well, and Shakti and I have our own communities too. So like when we created this, like I specifically told her, I was like, I want something that doesn't feel like something we already offer. I want something that's very unique for us, you know, to us and our experience and how we work with you. And I'm really excited about this because, like Shakti said, it's not just about showing up and teaching. A lot of group coaching programs, you show up and teach, which is really important. But the value that we pack in an hour every single Monday is like nothing you get anywhere else. And so the experience that we've created is really, it's the hand holding that a lot of people need at the very beginning. And so we have created or borrowed, you know, activities from, that's the other thing. We've taken so much of the knowledge, the podcast, the books we've read, like all the work that Shakti and I have done in the last, you know, years. I don't even know how many years. We've like narrowed it down to like, here you go. So that you don't have to go through the long ass journey that we've gone through. What?
10 years going on 11. I've distilled 10 years worth of literature and experiences.
Like no one has that kind of time, Shakti.
Yeah. I didn't either, but I didn't know better.
We've done all of the trial and error for you guys. And so we've narrowed it down to here. Here are the... Smitty's playing with a plant. He's like, oh, this is fun. Smitty, stop. So I lost my train of thought.
So basically,
have an interactive experience. There you go.
It's going to be a combination of activities that we've taken from all the books that we've read and all the experiences that we've had and all the seminars and the webinars and the places we've been, alongside with our own activities, and we're doing them alongside you. So it's going to be a once a week gathering where we get together as a collective and we do an activity together, and then Ann and I get to kind of coach you guys through that activity and offer you some touch-based opportunities, which we haven't yet clarified. The details are not like super ironed out, but the group exists. It will be active in a couple weeks. I imagine we will be getting it off the ground and active. If you're interested in participating and having a membership, you can write to us and let us know. We have an email, but we always put our contact information at the bottom of this anyway, so you can just copy us both on the email and write to us, and we'll receive that as well. But we are hearing you guys. We're hearing that you want the support and you need the support, so we're here for you on that level. But I really feel like we covered what we wanted to say when it comes to the physical ailment conversation and the stories around that. It's a more austere conversation. I feel like it wasn't as maybe hilarious as our typical conversations, but it's an important conversation. I think this is one that a lot of people experience, and they don't understand how much control they have over their story. You know, they're so they still haven't woken up to the understanding that they actually have a lot of control. And so I really felt like this was an important topic, and I really wanted to bring it to the table for you guys tonight.
Well, it's important because part of what Shakti and I want to do also is we want to empower you guys. Like, we want to empower you to believe that wherever you currently are, that there can be more. Not to say that you're necessarily stuck in some, shitty situation. You might be like, no, life is actually pretty good. But even with life being pretty good, there's always more. There's always more that you can do, and I think that so many people limit themselves. So we really desire to empower you guys in that way. Do you guys have any questions? I know that last week we were like flooded with questions.
I know. This week was a quiet bunch. Everybody was just like listening intently.
I know.
Nobody was asking questions. Yeah, if you guys have any questions, we can take those. If not, we will wrap up. Hey, Kelly, I just saw that you hopped on. Nope. No questions. There's always a delay as well, so I always like wait because I'm never sure if someone's gonna ask a question. I'm like, bye, and then they're like, wait. Yeah, you jumped in at like the end of our conversation. Like,
it's cool.
We're like wrapping it up. We just talked a lot about the story of physical conditions and physical health, and Anne and I both shared our stories of the conditions that we were born with and what happened in our lives and how that affected the story we told ourselves as adults. And yeah, we went into the excuses that we often make when it comes to we have a certain condition or we can't do a certain thing or et cetera, et cetera. And that's what we talked about. So go back, watch the beginning of the video. You'll get all the good stuff there.
It's a good one.
Yes. Well, if there's no questions, then we can just wrap it up.
Yeah. And as always, if you're watching the replay, let us know you're watching the replay. If you have questions during the replay, feel free to comment below. Again, if you're watching this or you have watched this and you feel like you know someone who could benefit, either tag them below or Smitty's like getting into all the things. He's like, oh, do shit. Tag them below or share the video. I'm also in a studio, so there's like no other room for the cats to go. Like we're all in the same place.
Funny. All right, you guys. Well, thanks for hopping on for another Monday night of Relax. This is going to suck. And I hope you guys have a fantastic week. Until next time, let us know if you'd like to join our membership, and we will be checking in with you guys about that. All right.
Have a good night, guys.
Night.
Bye.